Our 2-poll question.
Paulie just sent this one over.
Okay.
I'd rather be the greatest men's tennis player of all time or one of the top 10 greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Okay. Yes, Paulie.
So let's say Novak Djokovic or whoever you consider the greatest of all time at tennis, or Serena Williams for her sport, the greatest of all time in a sport that's maybe not as popular in America. Or you could be Drew Brees. Probably top 10 all time, not the greatest of all time and not in danger of being called that, but he's got a ring. He's an American sports hero, or the greatest in a different sport like golf, tennis.
Well, here's the problem. Well, if you said I could be Jack Nicklaus or Tiger Woods, I would take that over Drew Brees.
All right, I'll stay with tennis then.
Okay. Novak Djokovic is, 36? Does that sound about right?
That's right.
And he's got 23 Grand Slam titles. And let's say he has a couple more. Okay, is that going to make him the greatest player of all time? Even if you have the most Grand Slam singles titles, I don't know if he'll be recognized as the greatest tennis player, male tennis player of all time. Yeah, Paul.
I think if you don't call him the greatest, you have to come up with arguments. You have to create arguments that he's not the greatest, because scoreboard-wise, it's over, Johnny.
Bill Russell has more titles than anybody.
Absolutely.
And he's not the greatest basketball player.
But if you said who's the greatest winner in tennis history, it's Djokovic. Or, Jack Nicklaus still has 18, right?
Yeah.
He's, I think people consider him the greatest of all time. It's close. Tom Brady, scoreboard.
Okay.
But when you're the greatest of all time, that's got to count for something, regardless of what sport it is.
You can't take away resume. Like some people would say Bjorn Borg, he was spotless for 5 years, but he didn't do it for a long enough time.
Yeah. I mean, it's open to interpretation there, because you get old school tennis aficionados who would say Rod Laver. But, I mean, Djokovic has done it in an impressive fashion. Nadal has won so many times at the French Open that he could win 5 more of those, and I wouldn't consider him the greatest tennis player of all time. Even if he had the most, he's dominated really on one surface. It's when you kind of sprinkle in Australian, U.S. Open, Wimbledon, French, being a great player all around. It'd be like if you won a golf tournament. The only place you won was Augusta. You didn't win on other courses around the world. Nadal is a specialist. Great player. Fun to watch, but not in the conversation that you would have with Federer or Djokovic, Pete Sampras, Rod Laver. Yes, Todd.
But even if you're considered arguably the greatest, there's something to be said in a non-team sport. It's just you out there, and you walk into a room and you're considered, if not the best, one of the top 3 in a sport that doesn't require anybody else that contributed to your accomplishments.
You would rather be Novak Djokovic than Drew Brees?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Who wants to be Drew Brees? Nobody wants to be Drew Brees. Everybody wants to be Djokovic. Yes, Marv.
I'll take Drew Brees.
Okay. Well, that wasn't an emphatic, of course I'm going to take Drew Brees. It's almost like you're feeling sorry for him.
I'll take Drew Brees.
Oh, there. That sounds so much more definitive. Yeah. Yes, Paul.
I think I'm leaning towards Brees, even though I like tennis. I don't love tennis. Love football, and Drew Brees will go down in history, especially in New Orleans. But
Djokovic is going to go down in history around the world.
Yeah, it's close. To me, it's close.
Do I want to be? I think it's because we love. If you love tennis, I would love for somebody who is all in on tennis who would then say, "No, I'd rather be Drew Brees." Then that I would find that interesting. But I would expect somebody in tennis would say, "Are you kidding me?" He walks into a room. There's the greatest tennis player of all time. As opposed to Drew Brees. Oh, Drew Brees. He's not as tall as I thought. And then it'll be, and he won a Super Bowl. What's he doing now? So you might not get the hero's welcome outside of New Orleans that you would if you're going in as the greatest tennis player. If you go to a party and Djokovic is there, it'll be like, that's the guy. He's, how many? 20, 23. Wow. Okay. Should I go over and say hello to him? Yes, Mark.
You know what? I know Drew Brees has a Super Bowl ring, but Dan Marino may have more cachet when he walks in a room than Drew Brees.
Oh, sure.
Oh, we're doing cachet rankings?
I don't.
I could do a month on that. Cachet rankings?
Okay, would you rather be Drew Brees or Dan Marino?
Dan Marino.
Yeah.
This is so awful because Dan Marino was so super badass. Like there was a time when he was.
Oh, I'd rather be Dan Marino.
I know, but I can't choose to not have a ring. I could understand it. I would accept it, but I don't think I could choose it.
Man.
Over being the best ever.
He's not.
There's very few quarterbacks who have changed the game.
Yeah.
Dan Marino changed the game. Very few who did, and he certainly did.
It's a frustrating debate.
Yeah, Marv.
All these guys right now, they're breaking Dan Marino's records.
I know. Yes, Todd.
But you're still a Hall of Famer. You got that tan. You got that David Hasselhoff curly hair, good-looking guy.
Yeah.
He walks into a room. That's Dan Marino.
Oh, I get Marino's hair?
Why not?
No, you get to be Marino.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't mention the hair.
No, you get to be Marino. Well, Drew's got hair.
Well, but
but he does.
yeah.
He doesn't have Marino hair.
I'm not making fun of Drew Brees' hair. Believe me, I can't make fun of anybody's hair. But Dan Marino's hair is like
Oh, yeah.
slaying.
Now, Dan Marino's in the room, you know he's in the room. He comes in and it's like, okay. He looks like he came out of a movie. Yes, Todd.
Just got to ask yourself, think about what the average person's reaction would be. If like, there's Dan Marino, as opposed to, oh, I think that's Drew Brees over there. I think that's the difference right there.
Drew gets to go back to New Orleans when they do the Super Bowl team, and he's the focal point. Let's pay on.
What? Dan Marino can go into any room around the country. He could walk into the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl reunion. They'd be like, hey, Dan Marino's here for the Kansas City Chiefs. Marino could have showed up at the White House with the Chiefs when they're there. Yes, Marv.
There's people still wearing Dan Marino jerseys right now. And
well,
they're-
they haven't had great quarterbacks where you go, now I'm going to switch to another jersey here.
Right. The Dolphins have done a good job protecting his legacy.
Yeah. They're, Dan, we're not going to take any quarterbacks who are any good because we want people to always remember Dan Marino.
That was the plan?
I think that might have been.
Past 2 decades.
Privately, it might have been.